Hi there. Welcome to the Seeker Sisters podcast. We're your hosts, Melanie Norris
and Brittany Hogan. And we're so glad you've tuned in to listen as we share conversations that propel women to live purposefully settled in God's love.
So settle in, relax, and let's enjoy this journey of growth and grace together.
Hi, everybody. I am super excited that today we get to welcome you to our very first podcast for Seeker. Mel, are you excited?
I am excited. I can't believe it's finally happening.
It's happened. Y'all, we were praying before we got on here, and it's been a long time.
Yeah,
since
2 years.
started. Yeah. I'm excited. I'm
Me
really
too.
excited. Well, we hope that you all are excited about joining us in this journey. If you are a part of the She's a Seeker community, we're super excited for you to take this next step with us. And if you're not, we are a community of women that are just excited about running after Jesus and sitting at his feet in multiple ways. And so we just invite you to be on this journey with us. My name is Brittany Hogan, and I get to serve as one of the hosts for this podcast. But I'm excited to introduce you to the visionary and the founder, Miss Melanie Norris. Melanie,
Hi, ladies. Welcome to the podcast.
Super excited. So I get the honor today to interview her. But before we just jump into that interview, I guess we can just talk a little bit, Mel, about like why we started this podcast. What's your thoughts? I guess I'll follow your lead on like what your thoughts are on why we did that.
Yeah. So for me, I know that when I became a woman, womanhood is different and that you go through things that you didn't realize life was about. And the journey can be lonely, especially as Christians. You can feel kind of guilty or have some shame if you go through things and don't really know how to talk about it. But I found personally that listening to stories of other women who have been where I was really helped me get through those hard places and just navigate different circumstances in life as a woman, as a wife, as a mother. And as God would have it, he laid it on my heart to do the same and be the same for other people. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think what we've got a chance to do in the She's a Seeker community through our groups and even formally our growth talks has really shown us, that that's really possible. Like what you just talked about is really possible for us to glean from each other and learn from each other and to strengthen our faith through the community. And so when we talked about doing this podcast, we were like, oh my goodness, like this is a longer, more in-depth opportunity for us to be able to do this kind of in a scalable way. And so we're really excited to join you all in this podcast journey. So this is our first episode. And like I said, I get a chance to interview the founder. And so some of you all may know her personally. Some of you all may have heard of her. And some of you all may not know who Melanie is at all. But I have had the opportunity of knowing her since birth. Whenever we introduce ourselves to people, I'm like, she's known me since I was born.
Yes.
I like to say that. That is, although we're not that far apart in age, so I'm not, that's not even a plug for that. But I have gotten the pleasure and the honor of calling her my friend forever, literally.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited. She is my best friend and just a beautiful person. And I'm excited to introduce you all to her and present you all to her, or to present her to you all. And so without further ado, I'm going to jump into that part of today's episode. So I'm going to have a few questions for you, Mel, and we're just going to jump in and see what the Lord does.
Let's see. Let's roll.
See what he does. Okay, so I wanted to start off with this question because I feel like it gives us a little bit insight into maybe how you think and how you feel about things. So Mel, if you could describe yourself using a movie or TV show title, what TV show or movie title would you choose and why?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to say a movie, but I think it kind of describes who I've been in different times, not necessarily who I am today. And this is only because this is what I can think of right now. And I have not watched the entire movie, but I have watched bits and pieces of it and just identified with certain characters. So I'm not saying that the movie describes me, but these characters I think I can relate to. And that's the movie Encanto. Two of the sisters in there. I think her name was Luisa, the oldest, the strong one. I'm the oldest. And from much of my life have been considered the strong one. And then also the middle sister, and I can't remember her name, but she was the one that everybody thought was perfect. And that kind of describes my journey. Although I don't think I'm perfect. I've kind of felt like I had to be to meet the standards and expectations of others. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
what I
So
went with.
listen, so that movie itself, we could do a whole podcast on that movie itself. So I love that you chose that because every one of those characters, they definitely can embody either a personality trait or the way that a lot of us are wired. So I'm curious, like you gave us a little bit of a tidbit, but I'm curious as to why you chose them specifically. Like tell us about how you were brought up, some of your childhood, and why those specific characters spoke out to you.
So as I said, I'm the oldest of 3 children. Thank God I was raised in a 2-parent Christian home. Both my parents instilled biblical principles in me, and I have been able to witness them not just instilling those principles in me, but actually living them out. So that was really key for me. My dad became a preacher when I was 3 years old. So for most of my life, I've been a PK, which comes with its own set of expectations of being perfect and having it all together and all the things. But being the oldest, being the one that was seen as being responsible, being the example, along with just I guess the expectations of my dad being a pastor. So having to always have it together, being dressed right, having the right look, saying the right things, doing everything, just right by the T. And then also just, I guess naturally the way that I'm wired, I like to do things in excellence, which in turn could cause me to be a perfectionist. And so all through school, through grade school, up through high school, I was a straight A student, graduated top of my class. So lots of merit-based performance type activities is what I was drawn to because of how I'm wired. Plus, I think just the positioning of where I fell in the family and who our family is. And so yeah, that's pretty much, I think, my childhood and describes kind of how I grew up. I can't think of anything else that would add to that.
No, that's helpful. That makes sense. That makes sense. So I know that you have a heart for ministry, and you talked about your dad being a pastor. And it sounds like, this perfectionist mindset and this mindset of needing to be the strong one is not maybe how you feel right now. And so I guess bring us to that. Like how did that journey start of how your thoughts and desires changing to where you are now?
Okay, that'll probably take all day, but I'll try to condense. I'll try to condense it into a few minutes. So after high school, I graduated, went to college. And in college, because my mom, she met her husband in college, I just automatically assumed that was going to be my story. Like I had a deep, deep, deep desire to be married, probably from the age of 12 or around that time. I had been planning my wedding, like all the things. And so I went to college looking for a mate, also to get a degree, but a mate was top of mind. And so all throughout college, didn't happen. I, submitted myself to God, prayed about it, tried to do all the right things, walk with him, all the right things that I knew to do, but still nothing. It just didn't seem like the right one was there for me. And so by the time I graduated undergrad, and then I did another year with my master's, I didn't even have a prospect of a husband at that point. And I felt disappointed in God, just disappointed because it seemed like I was the only one of all my friends and coworkers who didn't even have a boyfriend or wasn't engaged or married. Like all of my friends or coworkers were either dating, engaged, or married. And I was the only one, in fact, showing up to events solo. And it was lonely. And then a few months after I graduated from with my master's, my mom passed away. So that disappointment that I already had from being single that I had not dealt with, along with her passing, which was another big disappointment because she passed away from congestive heart failure. She had it for about 10 years. We were a praying family, had prayed so much, believed God with everything in us, had a whole bunch of people praying, and just knew that he was going to heal her on this side of heaven. but he didn't. He chose to heal her by taking her to heaven. And so that was another major disappointment. So after that, there was like what I call like a slow drift away from God and the standards that I knew to be right, because I felt like if I'm going to try to live for you, God, and do all the things that you call me to do, but you're not going to reward me, like, what's the point? I see other people out here living any kind of way they want to, and they seem fine. So why should I even keep trying if you're not going to reward me? Because I thought that's who he was. I thought he was supposed to reward me because I was living for him. So that slow drift away from him began, and I went into a downward spiral. My high school sweetheart had come back into my life. We broken up right before high school graduation, but he came back into my life, and we dated for a while. And deep in my heart, I knew, and I sensed that God was telling me he was going to be the one. In fact, before my mom died, she had told me that I was going to marry him, and I was like, oh no. But anyway, I knew he was going to be the one, but I was still in a place where I had not processed through all that disappointment. And so I'm still, you know, one foot trying to see God and the other foot trying to live the way I want to live. And so we were dating, ended up getting pregnant before we got married. And that was a big, big thing that I said I'd never do. But then after that, it was kind of like one thing after the other, just different hard things started happening in marriage, in life, with finances. And I'm like, God, who are you and where are you? Because the God that I learned about when I was growing up doesn't seem to be the God that I'm experiencing as an adult. So like, what's the deal? And so I just went through this whole process with him of being brutally honest. And through that, he drew me to the word, drew me to himself, because for so long, even though I grew up reading the word, I viewed it more of as a rule book than as a book to learn about God. So I never read it from the vantage point of this book is telling me who God really is. I just looked at it because of my natural wiring and because of my desire to please people and meet expectations and not disappoint anybody. I thought he was the same God as I had as I had conjured up regarding people. And so he sent me on this journey of reading the word for myself. And through that process, I came to know more about him, to the point that I just surrendered myself. I was done trying to live my way. And I realized, he really is a loving God. Even though all these things have happened, that doesn't dictate who he is. And so I began this journey with him. But then that also, once I got began to get a proper view of him, that caused me to realize all the stuff that was going on in myself. And so from there, it's been a journey. I'll say probably a good 5 or 6 year journey on the last 5 or 6 years of like me getting to that point and then peeling back the layers to realize you've got perfectionism deep inside of you. You've got people pleasing deep inside of you. You've got all these insecurities that you built up. You feel like you need to prove things to people. You feel like you need to be validated by people. Just all these things that came to light through different circumstances. And so it's been a process and a journey. But today I feel much more free because I know who I am.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm not here for anybody else but God.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. There's so much there. I was trying not to interrupt you, but so much there. It's just specifically, I guess, to start with when you mentioned that reward system and how, and I tell you, I can totally identify with that merit-based, I guess I would call it merit-based theology. But because that's how our schools work, that's how sometimes parenting works, you just associate that with God.
Yep.
And so it's really, really easy to just be like, okay, God, I'm checking all the boxes. I'm checking all the boxes. Like, why are all the things not happening?
Yep. Where's my trophy?
Say it again. What'd you say?
Where's my trophy?
Girl, that part. Oh, that's so good. You're right.
Mhm.
Where is my trophy? And so then it begs the question, okay, so are we doing this just for the trophy? So then is it not about God? Is it not about him at all?
Oh, oh,
Right? Is it
oh,
not about him at all?
yeah, yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
that's good. No, that's really good. That's really good. And obviously, I was there for all the things, but I like the way that you explained and wove in what God has done and how he has brought you to where you are now and the lens that you see him through now because he's brought you through all these journeys. And I think that's beautiful to see too, because sometimes it can feel like I'm going through all this suffering and all this persecution or all these hard seasons. And like, what's the point? What's the point?
yep,
And it's so beautiful to be able to see just what God can do through someone's life when you're submissive, even in the hard points. Even in the hard points. One of my favorite scripture right now, like my scripture for this year, is in Philippians 3, and it talks about us learning how to be like Jesus, not just in the power of his resurrection, but in his suffering as well. And so we can learn how to suffer with Christ and kind of lean towards him, then it definitely gives us a better view of who he is. And so that's beautiful.
yeah,
That's beautiful.
yeah.
That's beautiful. So I
Mhm.
think, were you going to say something? Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
So I guess I'd love maybe if you would just share, you talked a lot about different relationships and you kind of shared about some of the relationships in your life and where what God has taken you in some of those relationships. I guess maybe share how you've grown and developed or the development you just talked about. How does that or how did that or how has that impacted a lot of your relationships?
So I will start by saying during that process of peeling back the layers, it kind of felt like a hidden season. And I remember God moving me away from all that was familiar to a place that I didn't know. To At the time I didn't realize, but to kind of deconstruct all that I was carrying and to just pull all of that out of me. So once I was away from everything familiar, he began to just open my eyes to truth that one, I was created by him and for him, and that it's not my job to please anybody because I'm created by him and for him. It's my job to please him. Like I live for his approval and not anybody else's. So that desire that I had to seek approval was natural, but it was just misdirected towards people versus him. So in my relationships, one thing that has looked like is not, I guess, not not that I don't share my accomplishments, but I do share them from a place of lifting God up and saying, look at what God has done versus saying, look at what I've done to win your approval. Because I realize now that it's not about me. It's really his work and I'm his. So why should I be looking to somebody else that didn't create or make me to say, oh, good job, Melanie. You're doing so good. I am so proud of you. Another thing that I struggled with was when I was in that place of, I guess, that downward spiral, when I just felt like if everybody else is living their life, why do I have to? I kind of developed a sense of feeling like I needed to prove that I wasn't perfect. And even after I had gone and submitted myself, I still carried that forward. So for a long time, even after I came, I guess, out of hiding, out of that dark place, not dark place, out of that hidden place that God had me in, just remaking me, even after I came out, people were still talking to me as the same person that I had been. So things that I'd always heard, like, you're the good girl, you're the perfect one, even though I know they didn't mean it in that way, I internalized it as I'm supposed to always have it together. I can never fail. I have to be perfect.
Mhm.
not that I wanted to be, I just felt the pressure to be perfect. And so I carried that um, desire, needing to prove myself as not perfect once I had come out of that space to people. And I remember a friend telling me one day I was unloading, just feeling the weight of it all. And she was like, Mel, you have nothing to prove. And it never dawned on me. Like, I don't. I really don't. But that set me free. So from that point, I wouldn't say it was automatic, but I began to think about that and pray through it. And I stopped trying to be perfect. And also, through lots of therapy, my therapist helped me to realize that just like people knew who I was, I kind of have to show the new me for them to learn and be trained on like how to interact with people. So even if they said those things, I didn't have to respond the same way I always had. It was an opportunity for me to say, hey, I'm human just like you. I go through XYZ. So yeah, those are a couple of ways I can think of. Oh, also setting boundaries. I've learned to set boundaries and that I don't have to carry the weight of, even though I'm called to bear the burdens of others, I'm not responsible for fixing their burden, which I feel like I probably carried a lot just because of who I am and how I'm wired. So I've learned to set boundaries and not take on things that aren't mine.
You better preach. Yes, all of that. Okay. All of that. That is so good.
Get a journey, I tell you.
Yeah, but that's so good because I think it's again, we talked about like the suffering with Christ and like wanting to be like him and our perspective of him, but I don't know that we always talk about how specifically that can relate to how you relate to the people in your life and your community and what you need practically to be able to do that, right? And relationships and community is one of the things we absolutely have to have. But when God changes you, you got to kind of change the people that are around you. And so I love how you explained that because I think it gives us a really good, clear picture. I heard God, community, and therapy. That's what I heard.
Yes. And something else I will say, if we think about the commands that Jesus gave, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, we can't be anything, not even know who we are or how to love other people, if we first don't know God and his love. Like we have to be perfected in his love first and be able to give our whole self to him. And then once we do that, like in his presence, he reveals to us who we are through him, through Jesus. And then once we know ourselves and love ourselves, accept ourselves, we can spread it out to other people. So I think it's important that we don't forget we can't do anything first without that vertical relationship with God and then allowing him to work on us so that it stands out to other people.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so good. Because if not, then especially if you do it the opposite of what you just said, like you're trying to change yourself and do again, we're checking boxes again, right? Yep. We're just checking boxes and I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to have better relationships. But if the vertical is not right, then again, we're not like for what purpose? Like, why are we doing that?
Right. Which is what I was doing at first. The wrong order.
Yeah. And it's easy to do. So I have another question. So in talking about relationships and you go through the navigation of life, I've changed. So I kind of feel like I need to adapt to this person that God is developing me to be. What would be some keys that you would give some people about having healthy friendships in that?
One thing I would say is, one, you have to have people around you who are moving in the same direction as you. So by that, I mean, you need to be loving God and they need to be loving God. Okay. Because as the Bible says, iron sharpens iron. Like you need people who are like you to sharpen you and to help you when you do stray, to point you back in the right direction or to pray you through things. Like we pray every week together, thank God. And it has been such a blessing. Like you need people who know God for themselves, because there are times when you just don't have it and you need somebody who who does have God in them to be able to pray for you, to encourage you, to walk with you. Another thing I would say is you have to be willing to be vulnerable and put yourself out there, open yourself up so that you can have those relationships. The relationship that you and I have was forged because our parents were connected. But there are we've had to work at things, of course, and
Sure.
be vulnerable with each other as we've grown. But there are other relationships that I have that I maybe met people at school or in college or at work. But those, just because we were in the same vicinity didn't mean that we were like bonded and connected to the point that it was a real friendship. And so it took going the extra mile and putting myself out there to say, hey, let's go to lunch one day, or hey, let's grab coffee, or hey, let's do a Zoom, which is easier to do today, to just get to know each other. You hear, talk different things, you kind of hear people's interests in some way, like you will know your people because there's some point of connection, like something that you guys have in common that you can bond around. Like there are friends that I have that are moms like us and wives. There are friends that I have who are ministry friends. Just different types of friends. You'll know your people, but you have to be willing to make the step to say, hey, let's take this a step further. And then when you do, at the appropriate times, open up and be honest with them about where you are and what you're going through. Because that's really where deep friendships are forged.
That's good. That's good. And we need those. We need those deep friendships. I am a huge Jenny Allen fan. She's a minister out of Dallas, Texas. And two of the things that you said reminded me of two of her books. She has a book called Nothing to Prove, which was a blessing to me in the same way that you said your friends' words were a blessing to you, because I think it's so good and so important for us to kind of be able to rest there as we're building those relationships. And I think also is her book about friendship, and alluding to what you just talked about. Like, it's so important for us to realize the vulnerability and the authenticity we have to bring into friendships, because if we don't, like, we're trying to muster up the courage and the strength and the will to do all the things God has called us to do and check all the boxes, but we have no community. We have no community to be able to do that with. And so that's so good. That's so good. That's so good. Well, I really just wanted you all to get a chance to learn and hear from our founder, our visionary of She's a Seeker. I'm super excited about, like we said at the beginning, of us going on this journey of having this podcast and being able to not just share a little bit about our stories with you all, but some of the stories of other women and men that have just a faith that gives them the ability to honestly and authentically and vulnerably sit at the feet of Jesus. And so I'm super excited about that. Melanie, thank you for sharing your heart with us and being so vulnerable as a leader. I had the pleasure of knowing your mom. She was an auntie to me, like an auntie to me. And I've told you this before, but I want to say it again, that if she saw you doing what you're doing now, that she would be so very proud of you. So very proud of you. I'll tell those that didn't know her personally, that when Melanie and I used to go hang out, that she would tell us, she's like, don't do anything you don't want me or the Lord to catch you doing. And so I like to tell Melanie that if she caught you doing this, that she would be so very proud. So very proud of you. So very proud of
you. That means so much. That means so much. And I have to say that She's a Seeker Ministries is an extension of her. Like, I feel like this ministry was birthed in her first, because I personally got to see her reading her Bible every day. Like, she would spend at least an hour a day reading her Bible and praying. She taught us to do the same. And she taught the women that she taught at church, to do the same. So she was often hidden in the background doing things, but what you see today through She's a Seeker, in large part, is because of her. So shout out to you, Mom.
She was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Truly a Proverbs 31 woman. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, first podcast. Thank y'all for joining us. See ya. So join us again next month. We're super excited to go on this journey with you all. But until then, we'll see you next time.